Sun City book lovers, welcome to Meet the Author. This show is made possible by Sun City Hilton Head Lifestyle Services, giving us a chance to learn more about the books we want to read and the people who create them.
Welcome to Meet the Author. This month's featured author is Denise McAllister, who is bringing us her book, Stalker or Saint. Grab this read because you become enmeshed in a mystery and enamored in a love story, all set within an arena of equestrian events. I guess I should say, giddy up. Let's meet the author. Welcome, Denise. Thank you for coming and bringing us the story of Stalker or Saint. Now, what should a reader expect when they start turning the pages here?
Well, it's a mystery. I hope they find it intriguing and that it keeps them turning the pages. It's about a young girl, I'll tell you her name, Katie McKim, and she participates in horse showing. She does that, but she's had different tragedies in her life, so that's where the story will take you. You don't know who's the bad guy, who's the good guy. I don't want to give things away or spoiler, but I hope it keeps people intrigued and enjoying the read.
A lot of pages took me to figure out what was going on,
good.
and pleasantly surprised. So,
Good, I'm glad.
okay, now you have co-authored two other series, Western series. It was, what is it, Rafter O?
Yes, that was the second one.
And then Wild Cow. I love Wild
I
Cow
know,
Ranch.
it's funny.
Great. So you're not a mystery to this type of genre, but I know people have asked you, how does the girl growing up in Florida become such a prolific Western author?
That's true. Well, it probably has to do with the generation that I grew up in, and a lot of people, you know, baby boomers. I watched Bonanza, you know.
Who was your favorite?
The young guy,
Little Joe,
Little Joe, of
Joe.
course, but I liked all of
Okay,
them.
Hoss.
Yeah, I liked him too. But all the Westerns that seemed to be so popular in those decades, and with my brother, we used to go down in our basement and watch cartoons and the Westerns. So I just loved it, and then I love animals. One thing led to another, and a little bit later in life, I learned about riding. You know, some people have ridden horses since they were kids, but I kind of took to it maybe in my 20s or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, in this book, you've soloed, and you've added that mystery component. So really, what prompted that evolution?
Well, I worked with my co-author, Natalie Bright, on the two series, as you said, and then we reached a point where she got really busy doing some other projects, and I thought, okay, what should I do on my own? And I just wanted to write some books that were maybe a little bit edgier. You know, these are great, and they do have drama in them, a little bit more romance maybe. I thought maybe mystery. And I really wanted to capture people with that first book. I thought, Stalker or Saint? Doesn't that sound sort of like scary in a way? But of course, mine are clean and, you know, no big violence or profanity or too much sex or what. I don't want all that.
Well, let's talk about that, because Stalker or Saint is set in this competitive world of horse shows. Okay. I was shocked. There's a lot of stuff going on there. How much of your own experience, because I heard 15 years of showing, how much did influence that? I mean, did you ever experience anything like that?
Sometimes we would hear about things like, oh, so-and-so judge was cheating or this and that. So you'd hear stories, you never knew what was quite true. Now, some people would be suspended from the horse association. I used to show quarter horses. So they would be suspended, some went to jail or whatever. So I always heard these stories, and I guess that's what came out in my book.
Well, Katie McKim is quite the hero then, because it's a captivating story. Now, in any writer's process, there's, you know, the three main components. You've got character, you've got plot, you've got setting. If you had to judge or rank them in the order of preference you like to do them in developing your book, what would they be?
I guess the first one I would say that is most important to me is character. It's all about the people in the story, and I kind of gravitate towards this younger woman thing. You know, I'm a little bit of an older woman now, but so anyway, she's younger. So I think character to me is most important, and then I can really delve into her inner feelings. A lot of people, a lot of readers like to read about the emotional aspect. So if she's gone through some tragedies, what is Katie feeling about those tragedies? if she, I'm not going to give a spoiler, but if she meets a young man, what is she feeling about that? Is she ready for that? So to me, a character-driven story is really important.
I think it's interesting as a reader. I sometimes get very attached to the characters, and you want them to do a certain thing. I'm going to say the twist in your book I was very pleased with, because I was happy that that turned out that way with the character. And you know, there are other authors who spend a lot of time developing their setting and a lot of care. I sort of like flying through that plot and just really loving the character. So I'm glad that we
great.
get more opportunities. So let's
Yes.
talk about that.
Okay.
Now, Stalker or Saint is first of a series, the Katie McKim series.
Yes.
And already you've got the second and third book are completed and obviously available. They're published. We got, you know, Pegasus Flying, Hero Brothers. Give a reader, as we want to delve into the whole series, what are we going to see continue? What's going to really change? Did you have much, you know, happening there?
Well, yes, but I always like to tell people, readers, that each of these books could be read as a standalone. That's so important. Even though it is a series, you know, some people think, oh, I've got to start with one. You don't really have to. It would be nice, but you can really read them individually. So that's really important. Pegasus Flying has to do with, I'm thinking of the Pegasus horse, but it actually, in the book, it's the name of a magazine that Katie McKim will go to work for. And, you know, will Pegasus fly, or will it, you know, crash? So it's, but it's more horse showing, it's more corruption, other things that she runs into, and how is she going to deal with all that?
That has to be a little bit of a challenge for you as an author. When you say it's a standalone, I know it means that you're going to reference, or at least put
Yes.
the new reader into the setting, like why is, and who is that,
Right.
etc. Is it a challenge to try to keep up with all that?
Thank you for asking that. It is sometimes a challenge, because I feel like, you know, I want to start zooming on the story and keep going. I'm like, oh, they don't really know this about such and such a character or the story. And so I do have to do a little bit of a recap, but you can't do it in such a way like you're just, you know, blasting the reader with like, this happened, this, you know, you can't give them a history that's boring. So you have to kind of intertwine it as to what happened in the backstory, so to speak.
Now, will many of the characters remain the same in the second
Yes.
book? Okay.
There's Katie McKim and maybe a gentleman that she had met in the first book, and we find out different things that might have happened to her family. So there's some family member drama.
You've made her a strong character too, and I think that's a fun way to approach a book. I do read a lot of what we, you know, have either here at Meet the Author or on my own, and a lot of times we're always having these women who have sort of developed their strength out of a lot of tragedy,
Right.
like Katie,
Yeah.
and it's interesting to see her evolve.
Yes.
It's really, it was a fun read. So thank you so much for that. Now, because you have accomplished so much as an author,
Thank you.
you know, here we are, you're going to have people coming in today, and I bet there's going to be some of those prospective writers. You know,
Yes.
I'm retired, my dream's been to write a book. What advice do you give people like that? Because you also do a lot of editing.
Yes, I do, right. I edit other people's novels, so it keeps me busy. What I have learned that works for me is the personal face-to-face contact or relationship. I met some people, some authors, and they said, maybe they were doing it, I don't know if I should call it an old-fashioned way, but they sent out 100, we call them query letters, to publishers. They mail them, however they do it, and they come back no answer. And to tell you the truth, I talked to some publishers, they take the query letter and they throw it in the trash can. And I feel so bad for people. But anyway, for me, I went to writers' conferences and I met different people, struck up a friendship with my co-author there. And we just started writing together and met a publisher at the conference. But it was all about face-to-face. You know, we developed a relationship with the publisher. We pitched our story, we told them what we were thinking of, and luckily we were so ecstatic that they said, that sounds, you know, really good. So I will tell you one thing though that was a surprise to us. We thought, oh, just write one book, we'll have it made. Oh boy, will be stars, not really, that's not important. But then the publisher said to us, no, they believed in series.
See, that's great.
And so we were sitting there, but guess what? So we were sitting there with just the one book idea, and we thought, we have to write 3 books? We have to write 6 books?
Wait till Netflix picks it up for a series. Then you're really going to be working hard.
So it was an education.
Oh, that is fascinating
That's
to think.
what I try to impart to
Happy, sort of a happy problem?
It was happy and stressful too.
Now, before we get you into your presentation, let's talk about what's up next then. I mean, you've got a lot going here already, but do you already have a plan for what's happening
Well,
next?
what I'm hoping, but we just have to see how it goes with the Katie McKim character. I would love to continue on with her, but we always have to look at sales. I mean, all those boring things. So we'll see how that goes. I've been blessed to work on a couple of short stories. I was invited to be in a short story, in an anthology, a collection of short stories. So that was kind of a challenge.
Oh, fun. Okay.
After writing 70,000 word novels, to write a short story that is 3,000 or so words. So that's been fun. And then, like you said, I keep busy with editing as
And
well.
how can we keep in touch with you? Do you have a website that we can reference?
I have a website. It's now set up with my editing name. It says McAllister. I could spell that, whatever.
We'll have it up on the
little
screen.
Tag. You're so professional. McAllisterEditing.com.
Okay.
And then if they wanted to reach me, my email would be Denise@McAllisterEditing.com.
Because we're going to want to see what's happening.
Oh,
I still have
thanks.
2 more books to go through, but I will get through them, and I'm dying to see what's going to happen with Katie. And we're going to mention something. We have a very special guest here that's here this evening with Denise, and that is a Katie who lives here in Sun City, and she happens to be a friend of Denise. And guess who the book's character is named after? Our own Sun City resident.
And may I say another little surprise of people who might be my guests tonight?
Okay.
I have a couple friends of mine. Their last name is McKim.
Sometimes I ask how the authors come up with their names. Okay, I read this. Cash, the horse.
Oh, yes.
Named after your neighbor's Chihuahua?
I know, it's kind of funny, but it works. I know. So I think there's a T-shirt that you could get, like, be careful what you say to the author, because they could, like, put you in their book or murder you or something crazy.
I don't want to be the murder victim.
No.
But, this is the blessing of Meet the Author, is getting behind the story, the story that you're telling. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the presentation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful. I did live here for 13 years on Landing Lane. I'm not going to tell you the house number, or actually the villa. It was a villa. But I enjoyed my years here, and I had lived in Atlanta prior to that. So I just got to the point in my life where I thought, I need to be a little closer to family, and I have nieces over there, grown nieces. So that's where I am now, but I chose to find a place about 50 or 60 miles north of Atlanta. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So, I wanted to be away from those big highways and the crazy traffic. And I drove over here yesterday, and of course I had to get in the crazy traffic, and it was pretty horrendous and awful. But so anyway, so I'm here and wrote some books, and thank you all for inviting me, and I'm so excited to share with you about this. And I started writing really as a kid, and it's a funny thing that, I don't know if I was 10 years old or whatever, and I wrote these little stories, and I even got in trouble with my mom, because I'll tell you what I wrote, where I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, which is kind of funny because I wrote Westerns now, but I know it's kind of weird. But when we would be driving out of our subdivision, I noticed as a kid some little old abandoned houses. And for whatever reason, even though I had a pretty nice childhood, I thought someday I might run away and I could just make that my house. And I wasn't even had any concept about, well, how would I pay for groceries, all that kind of stuff. And so I wrote this in a story. I wish I still had it to this day. And my mom found it in a drawer. And she says, what is this? And, you're going to run away? And anyway, we got into this whole big kind of a clash. And I even said in my little independent spirit, I thought, how dare you look at my personal stuff? You can't look at that. I was probably 10 years old. But it kind of started from there and just went up. And I remember, I don't know if it was middle school or what, when you have to choose electives. You know, some people would choose art or whatever it was. And I saw the word journalism, and I kind of didn't even know all what that entailed or what it meant, but I thought that's such a neat word. So I think I was like gifted from God with the love of words. And so that big long J word, I thought that is such a neat word. And so I took journalism in school for 4 years and went on, but then I didn't want to be a newspaper reporter or anything like that. But anyway, I was always dabbling with writing. And I must say, and maybe some of you have experienced this in your lives, there's something that you really like to do. In my working life, I don't know if I would say made excuses, but I'd work my day job hour after hour after hour, and I guess it was mentally exhausting. And so I'd come home and I thought, I just want to crash or watch TV or whatever. Other people have maybe more energy and they do all their hobbies and everything at night. But so I didn't write at those times. And I know people would talk to me and they would even relate stories about maybe some young mothers. I didn't really have kids or anything, but they would say, oh, well, she takes care of the family and the kids and whatnot. She writes early in the morning, like 4 or 5 a.m., and then does her day and writes at night until midnight. And I thought, that's not me. I can't do that. I go to bed, I'm exhausted. So anyway, I put it off for years and years. And some of my friends would say, Denise, why don't you write a book? And I thought, yeah, but what about? And I really didn't have an idea, I guess. Other people have ideas. But anyway, kind of fast forwarding to, I retired, so to speak, in 2018. And I really got into the writing thing, went to a writers' conference. I love this organization that I found, Western Writers of America, because I just love the Western story. And even though I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, watching those Western shows and loving animals, so I love horses, I just gravitated towards it. Went to the writers' conference. I was so excited out of my mind, because they go to Western states. I went to Montana and Texas and Wyoming, I don't know, and had these conferences, met some really famous authors and met some beginner authors like me. I was a newbie. And everybody was just so kind. And anyway, so I was sold on it. Met a lady, that's one of our books over here, and I invited her to my home in Atlanta. She came, we talked about things, we had ideas, and it was a little bit uncanny because she said she had started writing something and had an idea about, it kind of sounds like a cliche in a way, but her idea was this young girl inherits a Texas ranch from a grandfather or somebody she didn't know. And I said, Natalie, you're not going to believe it, but I have a draft of a similar story. And so one thing led to another, and she said, why don't we write it together? So that's kind of how our collaboration started. And I wanted to say at that point, some people say, oh, the Western is dead, nobody looks at that anymore. And they talk about young people coming up, and maybe they look at, zombies or vampires, or I don't know what they look at. But when I started thinking about it, and Westerns, on TV, Yellowstone, and I used to watch the Longmire series. It was about a modern day sheriff. I loved that. I was trying to see my note. I thought I put different things down. There was Longmire, well, all the Taylor Sheridan things, 1883, 1923, on, Hell on Wheels. So I really think the Western is still alive. And I have to tell you something I'm very excited about. We have a lady friend, another author, and she wrote maybe similar books, but she's been doing it for 30 more years. And recently Netflix contacted her, I'm so excited, bought her series, April 17th on Netflix. It's called Ransomed Canyon. Here I am, I'm giving her a little commercial during my talk, but I just get so excited for things like that. We're like, wow, yay, way to go. But anyway, here we go. Here's the first paragraph of Stalker or Saint. Her brother was dead. I thought that would be good to get your attention. The powers that be had told her he was, but was it true? There was no, and it's not graphic, but anyway, here we go. There was no body to bury. She didn't know what to believe, like being trapped in a nightmare. She wasn't waking up. Every single day, every minute of the day, she thought of him and thought of her parents too. They were surely dead. I'm going down a dark path, aren't I? With her own eyes, she had seen their bodies at the funeral home lying next to each other. I'm sorry for this part. Just as they had for 20-something years in life, only now they were in caskets. I don't know why I'm reading this paragraph, but sorry. I know, why did I choose this? Good grief, good grief. Fond memories when she was a little girl tiptoeing into their room for comfort and reassurance after a bad dream. Then traumatic thoughts assaulting her mind as she saw them in death. So anyway, I'm not going to go on. That was like freaking me out. Gosh. But anyway, so they tell you when they're trying to teach you about writing that the first paragraph is so important. I mean, the way it is nowadays with Amazon or you go to a bookstore or whatever, I know how it is with me. People look at the book and you're like, oh, and then they close it and go on to another one. So the first paragraph is so important. Catch their attention, the first chapter. So that's why there's some little sort of graphic elements, but it's not like that in the whole book. So it's about a young lady, Katie, and I have to tell you a little something. So what an author might go through, I had to think of a name. I went through a list of like 50 names. Oh, it's going to be Mandy. Oh, it's going to be Claire or something. I don't know. So da-da-da-da-da, and a last name and this and that. And then sometimes you check it like either with Amazon or Google, like are there other books out? There's a lot of other mystery series. Oh, maybe there's a Mandy Moore, so-and-so lady detective. So nothing I was coming up with worked. And all of a sudden, this was all just in my little brain, I thought, okay, my friend Katie, who is here in the purple. So my friend Katie, and I don't know if I ever told, and she lives here in Sun City, I don't know if I ever told her this, but I also used to have a little doggie named Katie. So somehow or another, that name Katie was whirling in my head. Then I had to come up with the last name. What's it gonna be? Jones, Jenkins, I don't know what. And I thought, somehow it just popped in my head, McKim. And I happen to have a couple, the McKims. And we're old friends from when I lived here before. And so somehow the main character became Katie McKim and all that. So she meets a young guy. Well, she's at a horse show. Things start happening. Horses start dropping. So I'm trying to get the mystery in there, the drama. The horses start collapsing. Oh my gosh, it's like so terrible. And I really had to check with a man that I know who was a horse show judge. And I would see him at horse shows and we all became friends and whatnot. And I would say, Brad, would this happen or that happen? And he was so kind of blunt, let's say, and just straightforward. And he would say to me, Denise, that would never happen. I'm like, oh, great. There was my imagination. But I wanted it to be realistic. So one thing led to another, and he gave me some ideas, and I guess that's part of the whole research that authors do. So things were happening at the horse show, a detective comes along, blah, 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 and anyway, so we have to discover who is really the stalker, and is somebody after her, and she's had these things happen where maybe her brother's dead, what happened to her parents, and all this kind of stuff. And I will tell you one other little interesting thing. So the books that I did with Natalie Bright, Texas, and she knew all about that setting. So I guess when I branched out, so to speak, on my own, I wanted it to be completely different. And I thought, well, what do I do? Set it in Texas again? And I thought, no. And so I just kind of, my imagination, I thought, no, Northern California. But now what do I know about Northern California? But see, that's the beauty of being a writer. You can just use your imagination. And now you should really try to make it authentic, and you don't want people to say, oh, she didn't know what she was talking about or writing. So I researched. I had friends who live in Northern California, came up with the city and this and that, and I just had fun researching it. There's some kind of bridge that they have, I think it's the Shasta River or something, and you can walk across it, and it's sort of plexiglass or whatever that material is, and you can see down there to the water. So I feel like I was really there, but then, I did have a little bit of a fear. I thought, oh my gosh, people in Redding, California are going to read this book and say, this isn't correct, or, I'm hoping they will say it is correct. So we'll see. So that's a little bit of the background. I will say I'm kind of jumping around a little bit maybe, but another thing that was very instrumental for for me in this writing journey and the Western genre and whatnot, where I live in Jefferson, Georgia, there, well, it's kind of an hour from me, but there's a most wonderful, if anybody likes art, I happen to love Western art. Cartersville, Georgia, there's the Booth Western Art Museum, and it's just so fantastic. And so it was really neat, kind of jumping back to our first book about this Maverick Heart girl, we put locations or local places in the book. I know I'm jumping from one book to the next, but she goes to the Booth Western Art Museum, and she can't afford to either have such art or buy such art, so she gets out of these expensive magazines, she'll tear out the picture and actually like paste it on her wall. So we did funny things like that. So it was kind of fun, and people who had read the books, they would say, oh, I've been to that museum, or oh, you used to show in such and such place in Georgia or South Carolina or whatever it might be. So it's kind of fun to recognize local sites in the books. One thing that I really liked, and this might sound kind of funny to you, but one of the blessings or joys about being a writer is, I always dreamt about it when I was younger, and I would see different authors, and I really thought, oh wow, how'd they ever do that, and I don't know how to do that. And then back in kind of the old days, I noticed that my favorite authors, they would write one book a year or one book every 2 years, and you'd wait for the book to come out. It's not like that anymore. And that's why with some of this stuff in the series, and the publisher, he said he really wanted like rapid release. And he said nowadays, the way people are, like what with TV, and they're watching a series on television, they want the next one and the next one and the next one. And he said it's the same with books. They read one, where's the next one? Where's the next one? And I just have to say, it puts so much pressure on the person writing the book. I kind of wish I could go back to when people wrote one book every couple of years or something. I was expecting, hopefully, to find a writer or two in here, and I just wanted to say, just do it. A lot of us, we just dream about these things, we think about it. But I would say apply it to anything that you like, any of your hobbies or things that you want to learn about. Just do it, don't put it off. And I know Sun City people, maybe that's what you do. You join clubs and organizations, or you do different sports or physical things, bocce ball or whatever it might be. Just do it. I've had people say to me, Denise, where do you get your ideas from? But you know what, just like any one of us, you've got ideas in your brain, and I think it just comes from our day-to-day interaction, whether it's a job, a friend, something is said or done, or a life experience, and you can just kind of weave those things into a story, if you like writing, I don't know. And I'm real excited, I'm going in June to the Western Writers of America convention. It's in Amarillo, Texas, so maybe I should wear a cowgirl hat. So I'll meet with other publishers there, and it's really so much fun. You get to pitch different ideas and go to different, we go on a field trip and all that kind of stuff, so I learn more and more about it. Really, I went back to college later in life, and I always remember my fiction professor, and she would say, Denise, it's not all about writing, it's about rewriting and revision. So that's what you really go through. I mean, some people might write a novel and they think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's an old expression. And so they don't want to change any words. And I think as a writer, you have to be willing to axe some of the words. And that same professor used to tell me, I forget who originally said it, but you have to be willing to kill your darlings, they called it. So you might have in this book, like, oh, I just think those are the greatest words that I put together. So those are like my babies. Like, don't cut them. Don't have an editor delete them. You have to be willing to strike paragraphs and strike pages, and I hope that makes sense. So we did have fluff, but it has to be good writing too.